In the far reaches of the Kharn, eastern fringe where broken stars bleed their last light into the void and reality twists under the whisper of the warp, a tear opened in the blackness. It was not a warp storm, nor the birth of a demon. It was something older, purer, and impossibly out of place in a galaxy built on suffering. A lone Kryptonian escape pod ripped out of the Imperium like a silver spear. The vessel was not meant for this universe. Its engines groaned under laws of physics that did not belong to it. Its hull screamed against the noise of 1,000 demons, clawing at its surface as it crashed through layers of chaotic turbulence. And then silence. The escape pod broke through the last veil of madness and drifted into real space, glowing like a dying meteor. It streaked across a dead, ash-choked world, one of the forgotten planets on the outskirts of the Cadian Gate, a world abandoned by the Imperium long ago, swallowed by war and radiation. It slammed into the barren ground with a thunderous crack that echoed for miles. For a long time nothing moved. Then the metallic hatch slowly hissed open. A faint cry echoed from within. The cry of an infant, Kal-El of Krypton now, stranded in the most merciless universe ever known. Hours later, a reconnaissance squad of the Cadian 122nd stumbled upon the crash site. Their boots crunched over layers of radioactive dust as they advanced in formation. Laser guns raised. Every soldier expected demons, mutants, or worse. Commander Varys, a hard-faced veteran scarred by a lifetime of endless war, was the first to approach the pod. The alien metal glowed softly, resisting every auspex scan. Inside, wrapped in alien cloth and glowing faintly under the planet's sickly light, was the child. A human would have died on this world within minutes. Even a space marine would have felt discomfort. But the infant stared up at Varys and smiled. One of the soldiers whispered, "Sir, is it a mutant?" Another muttered, "Maybe it's a warp spawn." Varys silenced them with a glare. "No, this child is alive, strong, unbroken, whatever he is. He has survived what would kill 1,000 men." He lifted the child in his arms. The little one rested his hand on Varys's chest. Plate and the commander felt warmth. Something he had forgotten existed. He made a decision on instinct alone. "We take him." No one argued with Varys. Not on that day. The Imperium is not gentle. There were no fields of wheat, no peaceful towns, no loving childhood for the alien infant. Varys named him Callus Varan, a name that sounded Cadian enough to avoid attention. Callus grew up in a fortress world where war was not an event. It was a lifestyle. Cadia trained children to fight before they learned to read. Fear was a weakness, mercy was a myth, and hope was a heresy. Yet Callus was different from the very beginning. As a toddler, he lifted metal crates grown men struggled with. As a boy, he fell from a training spire and walked away without a bruise. A laser gun misfire that should have killed him left only a scorch mark on his clothes. Commander Varys hid these things as best he could. If the Inquisition suspected mutation, Callus would vanish into the depths of a black ship never to be seen again. When Callus became a cadet, every instructor noticed he never tired, never bled, never broke. In drills, he outran chimera transports. In the shooting range, his eyes tracked targets at speeds humans couldn't comprehend. In combat exercises, he moved with terrifying ease. As if battle was his natural state, the whispers began. He's a weapon. He's not human. He's some gene experiment by the mechanicus. He should be reported before the Inquisition finds out. Varys silenced them all with threats and favors. But he knew, one day Callus's strength would reveal him to the entire galaxy. And that day came much sooner than he expected. The invasion hit Cadia like a hammer. Orcs, a full Wa driven by bloodlust and insanity, crashed upon the outer defenses. They tore through guard lines with crude but devastating speed. Tanks burned, trenches flooded with blood. Screams filled the toxic air. Callus was 16 years old. He had been ordered to stay behind, to protect supply lines, not join the front lines. But the screams, the explosions, the scent of burning metal and flesh. Callus couldn't stay back. He sprinted toward the front, moving faster than any human soldier had ever seen. When he reached the battlefield, he froze, not out of fear but shock. Hundreds of guardsmen were pinned behind broken barricades. Orcs roared, their massive bodies towering over the humans. One giant knob raised its choppa to cleave Sergeant Mira in half. Callus moved. The world slowed around him. He slammed into the knob with enough force to crack its bones like brittle wood. The creature flew backward 30 meters, hitting a ruined wall so hard it split in two. Silence fell. Every guardsman stared at him. The orcs stared at him. Callus felt a heat burning behind his eyes, an instinct he had never felt before. Twin beams of red light exploded from his vision, cutting through orc walkers, slicing into mobs, melting metal and flesh with surgical precision. The battlefield turned into a storm of fire and screams. When it was over, 1,000 orcs lay dead. The ground was scorched. The air smelled of burnt ozone. The Cadian 122nd suffered no casualties. But Callus stood breathing heavily, fists clenched, eyes steaming with heat. The guardsmen did not cheer. They were terrified. What are you?" a soldier whispered. Callus did not answer, because for the first time he was afraid of himself too. News spread. Rumors twisted. Whispers of a superhuman cadet leaked into official channels. And soon the worst possible shadow fell upon Cadia. The Inquisition. A black ship descended like a coffin from orbit. Inquisitor Marwyn Thal, a cold, calculating psyker, stepped onto Cadian soil, demanding the mutant be surrendered immediately. "Mutants are dangerous, and the dangerous must be purged," she declared. Commander Varys stood between her and Callus. "You will not take him," he said. Marwyn raised an eyebrow. "Are you obstructing the Inquisition?" Varys knew the penalty, knew what would come next, but he stood firm. Callus, however, stepped forward, calm, unshaken. "It's fine," he said softly. "I'll go." He placed a hand on Varys' shoulder, the gesture of a son telling a father goodbye. And without another word, Callus allowed the Inquisition to bind him in null chains designed to weaken psykers. Yet the chains didn't weaken him at all. Marwyn noticed, and that terrified her more than if they had. Deep within the black ship, under flickering lights and chanting tech priests, Marwyn studied him. She watched him resist psychic pressure that would crush space marines. She measured his strength, faster and faster until her machines overheated and melted. "He is no mutant," she whispered. One of her acolytes asked, "What is he then, my lady?" Marwyn replied, "Something the Emperor did not create, and yet something that might reshape the future of mankind." Callus simply looked at her with calm, steady eyes. "I'm not your enemy," he said. Marwyn shivered, because she did not know if that was true. The episode ends with Callus staring out the viewport of the black ship, watching the stars drift by, unaware that both the Imperium and Chaos had begun to feel the ripple of his existence, a ripple strong enough to shake galaxies, a ripple the warp itself had noticed. Because hope is a dangerous thing in the 41st millennium. The black ship drifted through the void, its silhouette a monstrous cathedral of iron and suffering. Within its labyrinth of cells, psychic null chambers and screaming vaults, Callus Veron sat alone. The walls around him pulsed with hexagrammic wards strong enough to suppress demons, salamander. But they did nothing to him. No matter how the Inquisition tried to bind his strength, nothing pierced his skin. Nothing slowed his heartbeat. Nothing dulled the faint warmth he carried within. Day after day, Inquisitor Marwyn Thal studied him from behind armored glass. Each test pushed machines to failure and psykers to collapse. Telekine blasts that could flatten. A Baneblade tank splashed against his chest like a breeze. Gravity fields designed to crush a Carnifex only made him bend his neck slightly. Needles snapped against his skin. Blades shattered. Nothing worked. But Marwyn was not looking for weakness. She was looking for origin. She read the alien glyphs on his crash pod until her eyes bled. She consulted forbidden ancient mechanicus archives. She even risked speaking with sanctioned psykers who, upon touching Callus's mind, recoiled in terror. "He shines," one psyker whispered before collapsing. "In the warp, he shines like a star we do not deserve." Marwyn stepped closer to the containment chamber. "What are you, child?" she muttered. "A weapon? A warning? A miracle?" Callus didn't answer. He simply stared out at the void, calm and impossibly steady. His voice was quiet. "I just want to help." Those words echoed in Marwyn's skull, because no one in the Imperium said such things without an agenda. No one believed in help or hope anymore, and yet he did. The black ship reached Terra. Not the Terra of ancient myths, not the cradle of humanity, not the earth of hope and peace, but a rotting husk, a fortress prison built upon bones and blood, a world groaning under the weight of 10,000 years of war. Millions of pilgrims crawled across its ash-covered plains. Billions prayed. Trillions died. The black ship descended through poisonous clouds, past orbital fortresses and star-spanning weapons, until it docked in one of the many sanctified hangars reserved for the Inquisition. Callus was escorted out, surrounded by stormtroopers, bound by chains that served no purpose except intimidation. Tech priests chanted. Skulls droned overhead, and the air itself vibrated with a force ancient and watchful. Callus felt it immediately. A presence. A siren call. A pull stronger than gravity or instinct. Someone, was calling to him from the heart of Terra. Inquisitor Marwen noticed the shift in his expression. "You sense it, don't you?" she asked quietly. Callus nodded. "What is that?" Marwen hesitated. Even speaking of it was considered sacrilege. "That," she said in a hushed voice, "is the center of our Imperium, the seat of the God Emperor. You must be judged there." The journey through the Imperial Palace was like descending through epochs of madness. Golden halls built by forgotten Primarchs, statues of heroes who died 10,000 years ago, hallways where the air tasted of incense, death, and psychic pressure so intense that even space marines struggled. Callus walked through them without strain. That alone terrified the custodes. The Emperor's elite warriors watched from the shadows, halberds ready, eyes glowing beneath golden helms. They had guarded the Emperor since before the Imperium was born. They had seen gods fall and traitors rise, yet none had ever seen someone like Callus. One custodian murmured to another, "Is he a shard of the Emperor?" "No, it's something alien, something new." "Should we strike first?" "No, the throne watches him." They stepped aside, reluctantly, as the Kryptonian approached the final gate. A gate no mortal had ever walked through willingly. The throne room was a tomb. The air trembled with psychic storms. Choirs of dying psychers screamed in constant agony. Machines the size of cities churned, burning 1,000 souls a day to keep the Astronomicon alive. And at the center, the God Emperor of mankind sat upon the golden throne. His body decayed, his mind burning brighter than a star. When Callus entered, something impossible happened. The golden throne pulsed. Machines shrieked. Custodians gripped their weapons. Tech priests fell to their knees in confusion. Callus felt something reach into him, something ancient, powerful and immeasurably sad. A voice spoke in his mind. A voice that had not spoken to a living being in millennia.
Kal-El!
Callus froze. His heart thundered. He had never heard that name since the crash. Kal-El of Krypton, the voice echoed. "Last son of a dead world, why do you come to mine?" Callus swallowed, overwhelmed but unafraid. "I didn't come by choice, but I want to help. I want to protect people." The Emperor's psychic presence swelled, a tide of memories, a galaxy burning. Sons lost to betrayal, hope extinguished, humanity sinking into endless war. And then a flicker, a tiny flicker of something the Emperor had lost long ago. Hope. "This universe will break you," the Emperor warned. "Its cruelty will twist you, its darkness will consume you, even. My sons fell before it." Callus stepped closer, the radiant aura around him clashing with the oppressive psychic weight of the throne. "Maybe," he said softly. "But as long as I'm here, I won't let it break anyone else." Silence. Then the impossible happened. The Emperor's eyes, long dead, long hollow, glowed faint gold. The Astronomicon flared across the galaxy. Psychers screamed. Chaos trembled. And the Emperor spoke 6 words that would reshape history. "Then be my light in darkness." A surge of psychic power burst outward, slamming into every corner of Terra. It washed over Callus, illuminating him from within. The custodes staggered, servitors shut down, tech priests screamed binary hymns in awe. Marwen fell to her knees. Callus remained standing, not as a prisoner, not as an anomaly, but as something new, something the Imperium had not seen since the Great Crusade. The Emperor's final whisper burned through his mind. "You are not my son, but you are a beacon they shall follow." Then silence. The throne dimmed once more. The Emperor fell back into his death-like stillness. But the galaxy had changed, and chaos felt it. Far across the void inside the Eye of Terror, Abaddon the Despoiler raged as the psychic wave tore through the warp. A new presence had entered the game. A presence powerful enough to defy gods. A presence that radiated a kind of purity the warp despised. Abaddon snarled, claws carving deep wounds into the obsidian floor. "Find the source," he commanded. "Find this light." The Chaos Gods hissed and murmured, each sensing the Kryptonians' arrival. Tzeentch trembled at the disturbance to his schemes. Slaanesh recoiled from a soul too clean to corrupt. Nurgle sighed with sad curiosity. And Kharn roared in fury. A being who could potentially rival the might of a Primarch had stepped into the galactic arena, and he was not theirs. For the first time in centuries, Chaos understood fear. Kallus stood before the throne, breathing deeply. His mind echoed with the Emperor's ancient voice. His heart thrummed with new purpose. Inquisitor Marwen approached him, trembling.
What did he say to you?
Kallus looked at her, not with arrogance or superiority, but with calm, profound resolve. He said the galaxy needs hope. Marwen stared at him as if beholding a miracle. Kallus turned toward the grand doors of the throne room. And I'm going to give it to them. He walked forward, unchained, unbound, unbroken. Behind him the throne pulsed once like the heartbeat of a corpse rising. And thus began the legend whispered across the Imperium, the Angel of Terra, the Superman, a protector in a galaxy that had forgotten what protection meant, a light in a universe built on darkness, a weapon neither the Imperium nor Chaos could ever truly control. But both would try, and the galaxy would burn for it. The news spread through the Imperium like wildfire. A being had walked into the throne room and lived. A being had stood before the God Emperor of mankind and been acknowledged. A being had emerged from the palace, unchained, unharmed, unbroken. Some called him Angel. Some called him Mutant. Some whispered that he was a new Primarch, born in secret. Others feared he was a herald of the end times. But all agreed on one thing. Kallus Viran Kal-El was no longer an anomaly. He was a force, and in the 41st millennium forces do not exist quietly. Kallus did not remain on Terra. The Emperor's final message echoed through his mind, a constant fire burning beneath his chest. Be my light. But light cannot stay in a golden cage. Kallus departed Terra aboard a recommissioned Emperor-class battleship, escorted by a reluctant squad of custodes and an entire regiment of Astra Militarum, assigned to observe him. Inquisitor Marwen Thal traveled with them, not to command him, but because she understood something no one else dared say aloud. Kallus was the Imperium's most powerful ally, and its most unpredictable threat. The battleship drifted across the void, following rumors of Chaos incursions, orc raids, Terranid assaults. Kallus went where Imperial forces were being crushed, and with each new battlefield, the legend grew. The first world he saved was Vortanim IV, a mining moon under siege by the word-bearers. The Chaos Marines were slaughtering civilians in the streets, chanting praises to dark gods as demons boiled into reality. Imperial lines had shattered. The air was thick with warp smoke and blood. Kallus descended alone. He landed in the middle of the burning city like a meteor, shaking buildings to their foundations. Demons shrieked. Word-bearers turned, confused and irritated, expecting another mortal to kill. But then the Kryptonian stood upright, and the entire battlefield fell silent. His cape whipped in the toxic wind. His eyes glowed like molten suns. His presence bent the smoke around him. A word-bearer champion stepped forward, raising a rune-etched chain axe. Another fool to sacrifice, the traitor sneered. Kallus didn't answer. He blurred. The traitor never saw the punch that obliterated him into powdered ceramite. Chaos Marines roared, opening fire with bolters, plasma guns and warp-infused relics. Explosions engulfed him, turning the city square into a blinding maelstrom. When the smoke cleared, Kallus stood unharmed. He lifted his hand. Heat vision lanced across the battlefield, carving through demon engines and corrupt flesh alike. Screams filled the air, not just of pain but disbelief. No one had defied chaos like this, not since the Great Crusade, not since the Emperor walked among men. Demons lunged at him, claws dripping warp energy. Kallus ripped them apart with his bare hands. The warp screamed as its creations died in ways unnatural to it. The remaining word-bearers fled, not out of strategy but pure terror. And then the mortal survivors rose from hiding, staring at Kallus with wide, trembling eyes. A little girl approached him, soot covering her face. She tugged at his cape. "Are you an angel?" she whispered. Kallus knelt, gently wiping ash from her cheek. "No," he said softly. "I'm just someone who won't let you die." That moment spread like a prayer across the Imperium. For the first time in centuries, people believed again. But where hope rises, chaos follows. In the eye of terror, The psychic shockwaves of Callus's victories rippled like knife blades across reality. Demon princes snarled, sorcerers trembled, chaos gods whispered. And Abaddon the Despoiler, the War Master of Chaos, felt something he had not felt in a long time. Threat! The aged, scarred giant stood upon the bridge of his flagship, the vengeful spirit staring into the warp. Kryptonian, he growled. The name tasted like poison. He defies the warp, he weakens our influence. He inspires hope. Hope! A concept the Imperium had lost long ago. A concept Chaos despised. Around Abaddon, his lieutenants, warp-fused abominations in twisted, Terminator armor bowed their heads. What do you command, War Master? One asked. Abaddon clenched his talons until sparks screamed from the ceramite. We hunt him, he said, voice heavy as a tomb world. This Superman must die. The Chaos gods themselves whispered in agreement, and the Eye of Terror vomited forth its armies. Inquisitor Marwyn felt it first. The warp trembled around them, a storm collapsing inward. The ship's Geller field screamed. Astropaths bled from their eyes as visions flooded in. Something's coming, Marwyn muttered, gripping the edge of her command console. Something vast. Something hungry. Alarm klaxons blared. The custodes armed themselves. The ship plunged into real space above a frontier, whirled just as a warp portal tore open like a wound. The vengeful spirit emerged. And behind it a fleet of demon ships, renegade cruisers and hell-forged monstrosities large enough to swallow moons. Chaos had not launched a crusade like this in decades. Not for a planet, not for a relic, not for revenge. This crusade had one objective: kill Callus Varen. The Kryptonian stared at the approaching fleet, floating just outside the ship's protective void shields. His cape drifted in the solar wind. Marwyn stepped beside him, her voice nearly a whisper. They're here for you. Callus nodded. I know. You can run, she said. It almost sounded like a plea. You can leave this world. We can hide you, protect you. No, Callus said calmly. People will die if I run. Marwyn clenched her fists. Callus, these are not orcs. These are not mere heretics. These are the War Master's chosen. They will throw everything at you. Callus looked at the burning horizon below, hearing the panicked screams of billions. Then I'll stop everything. He turned toward her softly, with something gentle in his eyes that no one in this universe ever showed. You said it yourself, I shine. So let me shine where it matters. Then he shot into the sky like a spear of light. The first wave hit him. Demon engines screeched through the void, spewing warp fire. Callus tore through them like paper, ripping wings apart, crushing metal skulls, punching through their cores until the warp dragged their screaming spirits back into the abyss. Next came the traitor Astartes drop pods raining from orbit like burning meteors. Callus intercepted dozens mid-flight, smashing them into fragments before they ever reached the surface. But they kept coming. Hundreds, thousands. Then the vengeful spirit opened fire. A beam of warp energy, the kind that could slice a moon in half, shot toward Callus. He caught it, held it, and pushed back. The beam cracked and shattered like glass. Across the bridge, Abaddon snarled, slamming his clawed fist into the console. Enough. He teleported. A burst of warp lightning tore open the void, and Abaddon appeared, floating in front of Callus, his Terminator armor glowing with the blessings of 4 gods. Callus stared at him. You must be the leader. Abaddon's growl was like a dying star. I am the War Master of Chaos, alien. Champion of the gods, slayer of worlds. You are nothing. Callus's eyes narrowed. Then why are you here for me? Abaddon roared and charged. Callus met him, and the universe shook. Their clash cracked the void itself. Shockwaves rippled through space. Asteroids shattered. Demon ships spun out of control. Warp storms erupted as raw power collided with raw fury. Abaddon swung the Talon of Horus, each slash capable of gutting a tank. Callus dodged, countered, and struck with blows that could level mountains. Abaddon bleed warp fire. Callus bleed nothing. The War Master bellowed in rage, pouring the power of all 4 chaos gods into his armor, muscles, and soul. You cannot win, Abaddon roared. We are chaos incarnate. Callus's eyes blazed with heat brighter than the sun. Then learn what happens when something stronger than chaos stands in your way. He blasted Abaddon with a full surge of heat vision, so intense it melted adamantium, burned warp flesh, and shattered the armor of the War Master. Abaddon screamed, staggering backward, and Callus seized him. The Kryptonian rose higher, higher, into the upper atmosphere, into the cusp of void and gravity, and then he hurled the War Master with all his strength. Abaddon vanished in a streak of burning light, hurtling back into the eye of terror like a bullet fired into madness. The warp howled. The Chaos Fleet faltered, and for the first time in countless centuries, Chaos retreated. Callus drifted back toward the planet, exhausted but victorious. His fists burned. His body throbbed. Even he had limits he had pushed that day. But below him, billions cheered. Millions prayed. For once, not to the Emperor, but to the one who had saved them with his own hands. Inquisitor Marwyn watched from the bridge with trembling breath. "The Imperium will change because of him," she whispered. A custodian beside her nodded. "Chain or break. Only time will tell." Callus descended through the clouds, landing gently amid the wreckage of an abandoned city. Flames crackled around him. Smoke drifted. Children ran to him. Soldiers saluted. Civilians wept. He simply smiled. Not a triumphant smile. Not the smile of a god. Just the smile of someone who believed the galaxy didn't have to stay as broken as it was. And the universe felt it. Chaos felt it. The Imperium felt it. The warp felt it. The Emperor, silent on his throne, felt it. The legend of Superman had begun, not as a conqueror, not as a god, not as a relic of Krypton, but as a light in a galaxy that had forgotten light existed. For in the grim darkness of the far future, even a single star can change everything. If you want to see more insane cross-universe stories like this, smash that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me which character or universe should collide next. Your engagement fuels the next episode.